We bring you back to Las Vegas for the opening World Cup race of the cyclocross season. The men taking center stage under the lights at the Desert Breeze Soccer Complex, about 8 miles west of the famed Vegas Strip. The Strip, globally famous, known throughout the world, and the backdrop for this first World Cup event of the new season. Unlike so many of the cyclocross events you see throughout the year, a sense of electricity, the glitz, the glamour of the Las Vegas desert on display, showcasing the bright lights, and that is why this race itself is held under the lights later at night than most races, which are staged during the daytime hours. But as you can see, the lights shining, and this, the first of several events on the World Cup calendar for the 2016-2017 season. Another North American stop coming up this weekend, the Jingle Cross race in Iowa City, a first-time World Cup event itself. Good crowd at the Desert Breeze Soccer Complex, and the men getting ready for their race, which will begin shortly. Steve Schlanger, Simon Burney here, and these are the last 10 World Cup overall winners, including Wout van Aert of Belgium, who won the overall World Cup last year. He won this CrossVegas event as well, and won just about everything there was to win in the sport a year ago, Simon.
He did, yeah, an amazing season. He was 21 years old, I think, this week at Vegas last year, and he just took everything before him last winter. It was an amazing season, and you know, the hard thing is following up a season like that. You know, he was. Did he finish outside the top 2? I don't think he did. You know, he was incredible. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting season. He's in the rainbow jersey. He's stated that he wants to honour it. He wants to win big races, and I think he's got some classic races that he really wants to show it off at. Always, I'm sure he wants to defend the title, defend the World Cup and defend the World Championships. But it's going to be an interesting season. You know, we've got a few riders missing, unfortunately, due to injuries. We've got Mathieu van der Poel. David van der Poel is here. Mathieu van der Poel, who was Van Aert's biggest opponent last year, had knee surgery a few weeks ago, and unfortunately not able to make the trip. Lars van der Haar, another one of the young riders that we've seen on Elite, that turned Elite from under 23 early. Again, injured hamstring, not here. So it's hard, honestly, it's hard to see who's going to give Van Aert a run for his money this evening.
You also have two-time winner Sven Nys, who retired at the end of last year. Ryan Trebon, also a two-time winner of this race from the US. He retired recently as well. And now let's hear from some of the riders who are here and hope to contend tonight in Las Vegas.
Think of CrossVegas' new style.
Very physically, a big beach spot with the saddle, and very physically. I think that's not the same race than last year. It's important to get a nice start, and after the best win today. Last year, tactically it's different, but now I think it's very physics, so the best win. And I think the favorite, of course, is Wout van Aert. Last weekend I ran with Wout. Impressive, a lot of power, easy, and a nice guy. So for me, it's my favorite.
Best of luck, Steve.
Thank you.
Wout van Aert, everybody says it. You're the main favorite. What's your own thoughts about that?
I understand that opinion. Of course, I won 2 out of 2 races. I did already in this season, so. Yeah, of course everybody gonna look at me, and actually I'm also the world champion, so then it's always more difficult. But I think the course is more rolling right now than it was when I was here yesterday. So it's better for guys who want to stay in a wheel. So I think it's gonna be a very tactical race.
So no early decision today?
I don't know, maybe yeah, when the strongest riders work together in the beginning, then we can have a front group really fast. But when everybody is watching at me or don't want to ride aggressive, then we will have a long race with many riders in front, I think.
Name your main rival.
I think I look at two, Laurens Zweek and Michael van Toornout, two young Belgians. And for this race, I also think about Jeremy Powers, the American. He's very technical and he's strong when he can stay in a wheel for a while.
Jeremy Powers, what is the American champion thinking of the total makeover of CrossVegas?
Yeah, it's really fun, really challenging, good course. Excited, and it's I think it's very different. You know, it's very narrow. The sand pit is, yeah, it's going to spread it out quite a bit, I think, in the first laps. And if anyone goes down, there's going to be big gaps immediately because how narrow it is. So there's a lot of pedaling. It's a hard course, but it is also very technical, and I think also tonight very tactical.
Van Aert said that you might be a factor.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. You know, he's on great form. We saw that last weekend. I had a bad crash, so I wasn't able to factor in the race in Madison, but I hope that tonight is different.
Michael van Toornout, you were named by Wout van Aert as one of the podium candidates.
Yeah, I hope it, but yeah, it's very difficult, and yeah, I hope it's a good race for me, and we will see.
Is the race course faster than last year when you put in a third place?
I think not. For me, was last year better. This year is the race is a little bit stronger, and yeah, I hope for me it's good.
Philip Walsneben, what's the German champion thinking of CrossVegas' new style?
New style, I like the track more than last year. I can't really say why, but I like it more than last year.
How about your chances?
That's a really good question. I had one race where I broke my chain this year. I feel pretty good, but I really can't say it. I like to be top 15, maybe better, but I aim on that target.
So those are some of the major players who we expect to be a factor tonight in the first men's World Cup race of the cyclocross campaign. Cloudy evening, but the wind that we had earlier has really died down. It's pleasant, it's temperate, terrific night for racing. Weather and the elements will not be a factor in the outcome of this race tonight. And as we've seen over this 10-year course of the race's existence, good crowds out on the hills that overlook the race course itself. And we'll take you through some of the riders who are in the front row. That is Stephen Hyde of the U.S., one of 17 Americans in this 57-rider field altogether. And the riders in this front row and those who start at the front of the race determined by world ranking. So the top riders, the best in the world, get to start at the front, which is always a big advantage in cyclocross. The more riders you have, the bigger an advantage it becomes because all the others behind you have that much more ground to make up. Kevin Powles of Belgium in the front.
1 minute, 1 minute.
The Belgians always
1 minute.
one of the strongest, if not the strongest nation in the entire sport. And there he is, the favorite world champion, Wout van Aert. Jeremy Powers, who won here in 2012, his first year as the U.S. national champion.
Yes.
Toon Aerts, also from the very strong Belgian nation.
30 seconden, 30.
The men set to begin. 57 riders all together. First World Cup race of the new year. From Las Vegas, high quality field. Wout van Aert, the overall world champion in the rainbow jersey. Largely white kit at the front, ready to roll. Lights go green, and the riders hit the pedals.
Simon Zana missed his pedal totally there on the second row. Right.
Oh, and a crash right away. Didn't even make the first turn, and we've got several riders who have hit the deck. Now, Dan Timmerman of the U.S. involved there.
Also World Harbour.
Steve Chanel, the Frenchman.
Corne van Kessel, yeah, Steve Chanel, who we heard from earlier just before the start, and he came from a second row start as well, so Unfortunate crash for him.
Just shows you the aggressive nature of the start of every cyclocross race, with guys trying to be at the front, and if they're not in those first few rows, trying to make their way up to the front. Because you would typically not see a crash on that kind of a straight section, but at the start of the race, guys, aggressive, frisky, sometimes a little nervous, and that can happen. Let's take a look back one more time at the incident. There's a lot of congestion there in the middle.
It started on the right-hand side and kind of dominoed across to the left, I think.
Chanel might have been in.
I think while I've been watching that, I think we've got maybe Stephen Hyde there, leading out from Tom Mayusen.
So tactically, how do you expect the men to approach this race in terms of the early laps?
Well, I think it's like we heard Van Aert say, I think it depends if anybody's willing to ride or if they're just going to look at each other and just look at him. You know, I think if Laurens Sweeck or Michael Van Torenhout or Van Aert decide to go for it early on, then I think we'll see a lead group in a similar way probably that we saw the women's. But obviously we've got probably a few more men in contention here. But if they all sit and look at each other, then I think we could just have a race that's, you know, 20 guys just moving around and just nobody really wants to take it on. I think we've got a couple of big Belgian teams that can use numbers to their advantage. Telenet Fidea is the obvious one. They've got so many guys. I think they're just going through the camera now. There's, you know, probably 5 or 6 guys in the first 20. We've got, you know, Marlux Napoleon Games with Kevin Powles and Michael Van Torenhout and his brother Dieter. You know, we've got Creelan with Van Aert and his teammates, Rob Peters and Tim Merlier. So, you know, it will be tactical, and I think it just depends who takes it on, which teams are represented, and who decides to ride and who decides to play the team game. But somehow they've all got to figure out how to beat Van Aert, because right now he's unbeatable. And so that's the dilemma for everybody else out there. And how do they beat him?
He is in 5th position right now. Everybody else single file in the field as they hit the first of the 2 flyovers on this course. When you consider the changes to the course from last year, the field we have for this race, how do you think it's going to impact the event overall?
I think the riders we heard interviewed before the start all said a similar thing. They all like it, they all like the changes, but they all think it's a heavier course, a harder course, a more physical course. Michael Van Torenhout, that's in 2nd, last year rode away on his own early on in the race and kind of led in a similar way that we saw Catherine Pendrell in the women's race, until he got caught by the eventual podium riders. And it's just going to depend if that happens again and how it works out. But I think the sandpit will make a difference.
And I only saw a couple of riders actually ride through. Most have dismounted, pushing or carrying their bikes. Wout van Aert was one of the riders who rode all the way through it.
Yeah, he looked very comfortable in training riding through it, as well as Laurens Sweeck was another one. In training, it just looked like he wasn't riding through sand. It looked like he was riding through grass, which was impressive. It's very hard to ride through if you're tight on a wheel. Again, Van Torenhout stepped off the line, which was a nice thing to do, actually. It meant that Van Aert could ride it behind him with a bike length in front.
And now Van Torenhout at the front, number 5, Wout van Aert in 2nd place. And then it's Tom Mayusen of Belgium in 3rd.
I'd expect to see Sweeck start to take a bit closer order to these 2 at the front. I haven't seen him, I'm not sure where he is right now. I think maybe in 5th there. Again, interesting that Van Aert decides to dismount for the hurdles. Van Torenhout rides them. Mayusen, we always see him ride this stuff.
Now this is the 2nd group that is chasing our leaders, and it's Van Torenhout at the very front, followed by Wout van Aert. Mayusen in 3rd, And Vanternout, the young rider from Flanders, and he was out front early in last year's race, held on to take 3rd place as Wout van Aert won. Sven Nys, who's now retired, took 2nd place, and it was Vanternout rounding out the podium in 3rd, but he's the first to really take the initiative and go to the front here this year.
Looks like Quinten Hermans is the other Telenet Fidea rider at the back of that group, number 7, with Mayusen. Kevin Powell's moving through alongside.
Whoa. Oh! Ouch.
Yeah, Corne van Kessel just shows what happens when you don't get it right, and that's, you might lose a couple of seconds dismounting, but if you get it wrong riding, then it can be a front wheel, it can be a long run to the pits, and it can definitely be a sore head.
This is the end of lap number 1. We will now find out exactly how many laps this race will be altogether. The race time will come in probably just over 1 hour in total length.
Pretty looking at a 10-lap race, I would guess here. But Powers there is already, yeah, significant distance down. Not in the top 25, I would say there. Just looking at him go past our finish line. Commentary position.
So a group of 10 here at the front. Yeah, a little regrouping as they hit that finish line for the end of lap number 1 after Vanternout had been out front with a small lead by himself. Wout van Aert in 3rd here. The world champion just riding comfortably, patient. As you mentioned, Powers quite a ways back. Jeremy Powers is in that next group as the camera changed position here. He was in the group that was about to roll through, so
I'd be surprised if he got caught up in that start straight crash, because he was a front row start. He was on the right-hand side from his start position, but I'd be surprised if he was had been caught up in that.
And as he mentioned, he's a bit compromised. He did crash twice last week in a race in Wisconsin, and Wout van Aert was also involved in. Van Aert won the race in Wisconsin, put on by Trek. Powers, though, crashed in the final lap of his pre-race ride as he was prepping himself for the race. Got bruised ribs as a result, and then he crashed on the first lap of the race itself on the other side of his body. So he's banged up coming into the very first World Cup event of the year.
8 riders there with a small gap.
Vanternout still leading the way.
2 Marlux Napoleon Games, 2 Telenet Fideas, a Creelan, an Era, Cirrus. All the major players are there. All the major teams are represented. I think Powers is the only surprise at the moment, not at the front of this race or in that front group.
A group of 4 at the front, but others just a second or so behind. So still a pretty big group on lap number 2 that are within contact of the lead. It is Vanternout pacing the group. So it will indeed be a 10-lap race. On the second of those 10 laps right now. They decide the number of laps after the end of the first when they see how long the lap times are taking. About 6.5 minutes for that opening lap. Now, as you mentioned, all the major teams represented near the front, riders with multiple teammates here. Wout van Aert, though, showed last week in Wisconsin that he could ride out front without a teammate and hold off the rest of the field, even though there were teammates grouping behind him. They couldn't do anything about it.
Yeah, he's got one there. Rob Peters just at the bottom of our picture now. He's got a second one there that looks like Tim Merlier, maybe? Yeah, I think that's Tim Merlier. So he's got 2 teammates close by. just in case, but like you say, he doesn't really need them.
And now it's become a group of 3 at the front pretty quickly.
Quinten Hermans, I think, is a Telenet rider. Good riding from him to follow that move from the 2 obvious strongmen, and Swig's the one that's probably lost out on that group of 3. Swig, Van Toornout and Van Aert were the strongmen at Gerardsbergen last week, the first of the Belgian races.
And Wout van Aert won in Wisconsin last weekend. Before that, he won in Belgium, so he's already won 2 races already this year before coming to this first World Cup event. Having won all 3 of the major series last year as well. Won 19 races a year ago, and figures he can probably match that, maybe even do better this year. He'll race probably 40 to 45 times all told.
Yeah, I think I saw his calendar, 42 races on that. I think Sven Nys at his absolute best has won 20, 21, 22 in a season, I think. So in his first year as an elite, he's coming at the very, very highest levels of the sport to win close to 20 races in a year, which is, you know, almost half of the races he competed in.
Second flyover. And Wout van Aert just holding his position in 3rd. Hermans at the front, and Van Toornout in 2nd.
Hermans' team strong in numbers. They don't really have a standout rider. It's now the team of Sven Nys. He bought the team at the end of last year, the team manager here. Very good strength in depth, but they probably need a rider like Tommy Houston to step up and actually be a podium World Cup rider. I think he's been in the wilderness for a couple of years. He was never quite matching the pressure that's put on him to be the next great Belgian. It's never easy, and he's always very good at the first half of a race, Houston, but he tends to fade quite often in the second half.
It's always hard to be the next great Belgian because
there's so many of them.
Yes, there are, and if you don't immediately live up to those expectations, there's another Belgian coming right behind you, as this is the end of lap number 2. And a pretty sizable group here. Kind of a breather. Moment to recalibrate for some. Hermans led them through, but a group of about 10 coming through together. 2 laps down, 8 to go.
Powers there in 21st, I think.
Yep.
British rider infield just behind him, 22nd. So yeah, for sure not the start of the race that Powers was hoping for.
Rob Peters now of the Netherlands, I should say of Belgium, at the front, number 14. A lot of Belgians here right behind him though.
Toonets is the Telenet Fidea rider that's joined that front group, joining Quinten Hermans and Tommy Houston.
This is the 10th anniversary of CrossVegas, 2nd year as a World Cup event. Last year, it was voted the best World Cup stop of the entire campaign in its first year as a World Cup race, and it was also the first World Cup race ever held outside of Europe. Of course, the U.S. did host the World Championships a few years ago in Louisville, Kentucky. This Desert Breeze soccer complex, really just a large urban park transformed for this one night of cyclocross racing. The idea being that they wanted to hold a big cyclocross race alongside the huge Interbike convention that's going on down on the strip. Wout van Aert there in the rainbow jersey, currently sitting in 4th.
10 riders with a small gap back to 3, and it looks like those 13 are a few seconds clear now of the best of the rest.
2 flyovers, 4 sets of stairs, 1 sand dune, 1 ramp, 1 set of barriers. That's what this course features this year. seen him twice now through the 2 laps completed. This is lap number 3 of the 10. Still a fairly large group at the front. Nobody taking charge, nobody really pushing it at the moment. Peters setting the tempo. So we talked earlier about the fact that Wout van Aert is the clear favorite because of the absence of some riders, other strong contenders who would have factored into a potential podium spot, who are not here for this first World Cup race of the season. So others thinking, okay, how do we beat them? Now that they've raced a couple of laps, what's going through their minds? What is the formula to beat Wout van Aert, who really hasn't been any further back than the top 5?
Yeah, I don't think there is a formula, and I think it just has. They have to do it on the fly and see what happens. And I think they have to. They're always at this level. They're always assessing who's in the group, where their teammates are, where the places are, where a rider's looking weaker or stronger, where they can maybe ride the barriers, don't ride the barriers, can they ride the sand where they can't ride the sand. And it's just a game of chess. And it's, you know, obviously Van Aert is physically right now, and as we saw last year, a different class to a lot of the other riders. But it can just work out that, you know, he misses a move, somebody crashes on a corner, a couple of riders get clear without one of his teammates in it, and then suddenly he's finding himself on the back foot. But you know, really, there isn't a formula, and I think if there was, then they'd be picking it up off the internet and they'd all be working to it. You can see Powers now just behind Stephen Hyde, the leading Americans. Just around about in the top 20, I think. But yeah, Sweek, he's been strong at the beginning of this season for sure. His teammate is his brother in this group. I think we'll probably see him, yeah, just at the back of this group now with the red helmet.
And now Wout van Aert in second place. There he is, just ahead of Antonout in the blue and white, who's in third.
And those are the 3 I think that we mentioned before the start, and the riders that were interviewed also mentioned that it was Sweek, Van Aert, Van Torenhout are the 3. And we're seeing those now at the front of the race and splitting that group of 13. And you can just see Sweek, he's just checking it out, looks across, see who's where. So Van Aert's got a teammate in Rob Peters. There's the 2 Telenets. Sweek doesn't have a teammate.
Well, for people who typically watch road racing more and can see the ample evidence of how teamwork develops in a particular race, how about teamwork here? Where will it manifest itself the most?
It's just being able to close a gap or to open a gap or to sit up on a corner if your teammate's in front, and just to let those couple of bike lengths go and just let somebody else do the chasing, and just keep messing up a rhythm, or just keep interfering a little bit. An attack from Quinten Hermans, I think.
Yeah, that is Hermans, number 7 there. Haven't seen many individual attacks so far,
but it's Van Aert that's put Rob Peters on the front to try and bring that one back.
Yeah.
And Peters will just ride tempo just to keep the distance, drag it back slightly. Van Torenhout's the one that really could have done with Kevin Powell's in that group. Powell's leading this second group, but
it doesn't help him. Would have preferred to have him in that front group. See the way the riders are spread out on the course. This is that final set of stairs that leads to that last turn, and then that straight back to the finish, and what will be the end of lap number 3.
2 nets bringing up the rear of that group of 6, I think we've got now.
20 minutes in, 3 laps down, 7 to go. And a handful of seconds back to this next group on the course. So Quinten Hermans at the very front. A series of Belgian riders there. And now there's the American Jeremy Powers in the front of this group coming across the line. Belgians occupying the first 11 places on the course. Venter now. In that front group, was leading for a while, has faded somewhat. And this is back to the head of the race here.
Yeah, Van Toornout's still in that group. Pauwels is trying to drag this group back.
Come on, you can catch it. Don't sit on the wheel.
Boulot, the rally rider, number 23, the Frenchman. Doing a good ride to be in that company. Steve Chanel, didn't see him yet, but again, he was the rider at the weekend in Madison, Wisconsin that won on day one. Van Aert decided to sit that one out.
And remember, Chanel crashed early on too, on that opening lap where we saw the crash that occurred just about 10 seconds into the race. Rob Peters here at the very front, number 14. And a group of 6 now leading the way as Pauwels pacing that next group as they try to bridge across. But can they get there?
I think Pauwels will bring a couple of those guys back.
Kevin Pauwels, former winner of the overall World Cup title.
Oh,
wow.
Van Aert.
Look at this. Wout van Aert getting caught up here on the barriers, has to get the tape away from the bike. Let's take a look again. Oh, he tripped. He just tripped. Wow.
That looks like it
immediately
hurts as well.
holds his hip too.
Yeah. Possibly stepped on by another rider.
Wow, well that
him there.
totally changes the race. Still holding his hip here, but now he is gone from that front group. Just looked like a simple little situation, but he tripped over a barrier. Carrying his bike, something he's done hundreds of times before, but caught his foot, and now it's changed the complexion of what might happen at the front. What do they think now? Wout van Aert's gone. What does it do to the tactics?
Well, now they're racing to win and not racing to come on the podium. For sure, you know, Van Aert's hurting now. He's not going to, unless he can regroup, but I think he's probably outside of the top 20 right now.
And he was passed by a lot of riders. And now look at how aggressive it's become. Michael Van Toornout at the front, riding through the sand. The others dismount.
And you can see the difference in speed with Van Toornout there riding that. He's going to come out of there with a few seconds advantage, I'm sure.
Wout van Aert, can he get back in it? He's going to have to use a lot of energy here. He's coming up behind Jeremy Powers into the sand. He's going to ride right through it.
Impressive that.
Van
Rides up
Toornout
to the back wheel and carries on riding past people, and yet that's the gap that started just being able to ride that sand. So we need to try and get a clock on Van Aert here to see how far back he is from this lead group. I would guess it's going to be in the region of, I don't know, I'd be guessing 20-25 seconds, but
yeah, we didn't see him through that area that they just completed. Now this is Michael Van Toornout, who has the biggest lead of the night so far. We haven't seen anybody establish this sizable margin at the front by themselves. Toenaerts, Quinten Herman's behind. Now once the issue happened there with Wout van Aert, Michael Van Toornout hit the gas. And now establishing this lead as he sees the others dealing with the barriers. Wout van Aert not through here. Still even further back.
I think it's going to be the finish line before we can get an accurate clock
there
on
he
him.
is.
Yeah.
Just saw him coming through there. Is that too far back?
I think we'll know in the next half lap. Honestly, I think we'll... he was obviously hurting when he got back on. And I think it depends if adrenaline has got rid of that pain and he's motivated to try and get back up to the front. And I'm sure if the pain isn't there, he'll make the effort. And I think, 20-25 seconds. We've seen it before. We've seen we've seen Nace come back from similar gaps at World Cup races in recent years. So it's definitely doable.
Now, if there's anybody who could do it, it would be him.
And this group now aren't really riding. So yeah, he's coming into the back end of the pit. So it's only. That's only 10 or 15 seconds maximum to that group, and that group aren't riding. They're not chasing Van Toorn out here.
And now,
yeah, 12 seconds I got that at, so
Van Aert's made his way.
He's going to come back.
Half a dozen laps to go. Michael Van Toorn now, the leader, with the biggest gap we've seen. There's Wout Van Aert. He's made it into that group.
It was Wolfslaben that was with him, who was interviewed before the start, hoping for a top 15, so he's close to his goal right now. But yeah, we're looking at 21 seconds to...
Yeah, just over 20.
Yeah.
To Wout Van Aert. And he has 6 laps to make that up in.
Power's there, 33 seconds down. But this group now, it's definitely just sat up and Van Aert's back at the front.
So a little over a half an hour of racing for Wout Van Aert to recover the deficit that he faces to this man, our leader Michael Van Toorn, out right now.
Smart move from Van Toorn out though to make the move when he did. He realised that Van Aert wasn't there and took the opportunity.
Rob Peters in the green and orange here, just ahead of Wout.
And surprising that the teams of Telenet and Laurens Wick's team didn't keep the pressure on. They just sat up and rolled and really gave Van Aert an easier ride back into that front group.
You would have expected more riders, more teams to take advantage of the situation, and they didn't do it.
They didn't. No.
This is really the only man who recognized what the scenario was and started to push the pace.
And we've got a similar situation now to last year. We've got him out in front with a sizable group chasing. And what happened last year was Nace and Van Aert attacked from a group of this kind of size and bridged up to
and here's Wout Van Aert now. Yeah, Van Aert's now making a move to the front. Can this man ride solo the rest of the way? Nobody in the distance at the moment, so pretty sizable lead.
So that lead is 14 seconds back to Van Aert and Sweek.
Now Wout Van Aert was holding his hip after he fell and immediately when he got back on the bike, but not showing any effects of what it might have done to him now, because he's riding at the front and looking like he's trying to recover that lost time, pushing the tempo, trying to catch this man, Michael Van Toorn, out at the front. Well, Van Toorn out again, was at the front for a while in last year's race, eventually settled for third. Wout Van Aert, followed by Laurens Sweek, number 4. But nobody really pushing it more than Wout Van Aert at the moment. Does he have to try and make it all back quickly, or can he still pace himself at this point with 6 laps to go and still get back in it?
Exactly, he's still got 30 minutes of racing to go, and it's that's a long time.
Oh, but look
he's
at
obviously,
this.
yeah, he's putting the pressure on him to get him back there, and it's only Sweek and Hermans, I think.
Look at this, he rides the sand once again, and he's closing the gap to Michael Van Toorn now.
Tunerts and Quinten Hermans trying to hang on the coattails of Sweek, really, because Van Aert's going across that gap.
Van Aert, second place, with Sweek right behind him. But it's only a handful of seconds right now. Now, Wout Van Aert, after the crash, was almost half a minute back. And now he's just a few seconds. He's made up a lot of time and hasn't needed a lot of course in order to do it. He's covered a lot of real estate in a short span, and he's working himself back into contention for the race lead. And Sweek just sitting on his wheel as Van Aert leads the way.
7 seconds right now. The gap from Van Aert to Sweek and Van Aert.
Any other rider hits the deck and goes down the way Van Aert did, at that point, you're thinking game over for them. No way they get back into it. But Wout Van Aert, not like a lot of the riders in this field.
Very true. But that tumble, it obviously shook him up. You know, he was taking his time untangling his bike, and he was holding his hip, and he wasn't in a big rush to get going again. And it took him a few moments to regroup. But he's well and truly back in this race now. There's no.
And he showed a sense of poise. He didn't panic or anything like that. He's worked himself right back close to the front. And they're going to get Van Aert out here before too long. You got Sweek just behind, and then Hermans.
Hermans has done well there to get back to those two. He was looking like he was going to get tailed off with Tunerts, but and again, it's Kevin Powers that's always the one leading the chase.
Kevin Powles, again, a former overall World Cup winner. And working their way to the end of the lap. 5 to go. Four seconds back. Wout Van Aert, Sweek, and Hermans. Tunerts next across the line, rounding out the first 5. And Kevin Powles leads this group through.
16 seconds to the Powles group.
So 5 laps down, 5 to go. Halfway through this opening cyclocross World Cup race of the season here in Las Vegas. On this Wednesday night, under the lights, late night racing on a perfect night for competition. Very light breeze, slight chill to the air. Absolute ideal evening in the Nevada desert.
Powers just came past us at 51 seconds, I think, in around about 22nd, 23rd place. Only Brits watching in field. Just a couple of places behind Powers in a handful of seconds. And Stephen Hyde, again, just 10 or 15 seconds behind field in about 25th, 26th place.
Now, Wout Van Aert knows he's back. He knows he has Van Aert out in his range and can dial back the pressure now, try to recover a little, and save something for the end, because again, we still have half this race to go. But Wout Van Aert pulls up alongside. He may just pass him right here. Wow.
I think that's probably just to let him know he's back.
I think the most remarkable thing is the lack of time it took him to get back up to the front after his crash, and his hip, no doubt, has to be bothering him the way he was holding it. Maybe not an injury that's going to hamper him too much, but it's got to be affecting him somewhat, you would think, the way he at least was holding it when he went down and when he got back on the bike. But it did not take him long to recover the time that was lost, which again was probably just inside of a half minute.
We might see this group close up a little bit. We might see two nets as well. Just start to draw in a little bit on this group of four. I think the heat will go out of the, well, not the chase anymore, but the effort of Sweek and Van Aert and Hermans to get back to Van Tornout.
Wout van Aert getting some recovery here. One of his big strengths is the fact that he can typically, everything being equal, keep the pressure on and keep that high tempo throughout the race. He doesn't need a lot of recovery, he doesn't need to take a lap to try and reset himself. He can just continue that high power output longer than most. However, this is a different situation. Following the crash, the energy he's had to use in a quick amount of time. Now he is trying to get a little recovery, sit in this four-man group, which may be five here in just a moment, and maybe save it for another burst later.
I watched the Geraardsbergen race in Belgium last week, and to me, he looked incredibly strong, but not a lot of kind of snap, not a lot of ability to close a gap really, really fast, which was what he had last year. But I think that's probably still to come this season. I think that's just a lack of almost race fitness, and that'll come really fast. But the way he was closing gaps last week in Belgium was just exactly what you just said. It was just a constant threshold effort that just brought him back to the front of the race really regularly, and he didn't need to accelerate and make big surges, big efforts. He just rolled across gaps. He's had a really, really good summer on the road. He's been competitive in some big races, and another summer of racing like that just gives you that extra strength.
Won a smaller race in Belgium, also won the prologue at the Tour of Belgium, finished 8th overall in that race, and he finished 8th behind 7 World Tour road racers in that event.
That's right, and in that prologue he beat people like Tony Martin.
Yeah.
You know, he was shows the level of ability and the class of athlete he is.
Even though he still says that he's not going to turn his focus to the road, he still wants to compete in cyclocross at this high level, all the races, not make it part-time. We'll see if that eventually changes, but for now his focus still firmly placed in the sport of cyclocross. As Sweek here, number 4, leads the way ahead of Enternout, and Wout van Aert next, Hermans and Ertz, the next two on the course.
Crazy things going on out there.
Van Aert's not going to get any help from these two Telenet guys, I don't think. I don't think they're capable of closing the gap. Or maybe Hermans slightly give him a turn every now and again, but to significantly close the gap to Sweek and Van Tornout now is going to be down to Van Aert, I think. And it really does depend how he feels, and that's all down to...
At this point, is he just feathering that gap to get some recovery, or is he maybe in trouble?
I don't think so. I think he's in trouble. I don't think he would let a gap go if he was able to stay with it. I think he'd just sit on the wheel and maybe not go through, but he'd certainly sit there. But again, you know, we're just watching him ride back across gaps like that. And I think it's maybe Sweek's surge, and I think it's maybe the surges that he's not comfortable with. But he's happy riding at his own level, his own threshold right now, and he's bringing him back to the front. But again, like we talked about with the women's race, I still on a course like this, a heavy course, you can only make so many efforts so many times, and we saw it in the women's race. And I think, you know, it will have just the effort to get back will have taken its toll, even with the ability of Wout van Aert.
Now here he is in the front group, coming to the end of the lap. This should be 6 laps in, 4 to go. 40 minutes deep in this cyclocross race from Las Vegas, first World Cup event of the new year. It's a group of 4 leading the way. Make that 5 altogether here. little bit of a gap, but not too much. And then this next group, a handful of seconds behind.
And 2 more Telenet Fideas going across with Rob Peters. It was Thijs van der Morongen, I think, was the other Telenet. And again, it would give those guys great strength in numbers, but I just don't see one of that group that would be able to honestly challenge for a podium, even if they had 4 riders in a group of 10 now.
It's Rob Peters coming to the front of this group as he tries to bridge the gap.
Give it up, give it up, give it up, give it up.
And Jeremy Powers back here in this group. Number 27 there, the former winner of this race, U.S. national champion, coming through. Well down now in the standings overall, but again suffering from the 2 crashes that he endured last week in Wisconsin. We're getting a bigger group here forming at the front, some groups merging. It was a contingent of 5, but now it is grown. Looking more like what we saw in the opening lap.
Yeah, 8 riders there, and just little gaps between wheels, really. You've probably got 15 riders within 15 seconds, I would guess, there.
Wout van Aert back in that group after the crash a couple of laps ago. He's carrying his bike over some barriers, simply just tripped.
This is where it happened.
Got his bike tangled up in the ribbon that threads through the poles that were stationed in the ground there. Took some time to untangle those, was grabbing his hip. Didn't get on his bike immediately, took some time with it, and then had to make up a gap of almost half a minute, but did that in no time at all. And now he's back in that front group. Looks like it's about 8 riders here, and nobody really, at this point, dialing up the pressure.
Good riding by Rob Peters. He was in that second chasing group along with Kevin Powles and the other 2 Telenet guys. But as soon as he got across to it, he moved up the group. Now he's on the front, just trying to whittle it down again. I think for him, for Van Aert, it's the group's too big. That kind of 6 rider, 8 riders, probably comfortable for them, but just too many opportunities to get tangled up with another rider or to miss a pedal, fall off in the sand, and suddenly the gap's open and you're just making life harder for yourself if you can. And I think there, Peter's looking around for Van Aert just to make sure he's up the front of that group.
Which rider in this front group are you expecting to see something from shortly?
I think it's Sweek now. Sweek, Van Tornout and Aert are the 3 strongest in that group for sure. The Telenet Fidea guys are just, they're there, but I don't think they're able to make a big impact on the group. And the riders like Kevin Powers, you were seeing him here struggling. He's even when the groups merge, he's not moving up the group. He's staying in that kind of 8th, 10th, 12th position, and it's just not helping him. Which obviously proves he doesn't have the legs today, you know, because he would be otherwise. But these 2, Sweek and Van Tornout, are the strong ones, along with Van Aert, and it's just going to be a case of the effect of Van Aert's tumble, and but I'd expect those 3 at some point to be the 3 in contention for the podium.
Yeah, Sweek and Van Tornout have proven to be the strongest outside of Wout van Aert for his crash. And hard to tell exactly how much that's taken out of him. He's still in 3rd right now with Sweek at the front. Laurens Sweek, 7th place at the World Championships last year. Very consistent 2015 campaign. Also 7th here in Las Vegas in the World Cup opener. They can't shake the world champion.
But I think the dynamic with the 3 or 4 riders that are missing here is going to make an interesting races later in the season. I think, you know, we're seeing, say, Mathieu van der Poel, Lars van der Haar, Klaas van Tornout, Ailey is a bit, the under-23 world champion. They're not here, and yeah, you know, you've got other teammate options available, and there are 4 riders that can be in contention for a podium at any time. So it's an exciting season unfolding, really, because now we've got these new younger Belgian riders that have kind of taken over from the Naces and the Klaas van Tornout. You know, people like Michael van Tornout and Laurens Swick. It's gonna make for some interesting racing.
Rob Peters now at the front of the race. Wow, this is the first of 9 races in 5 countries. Got new stops this year in Germany as well as Italy. And 2 stops in North America, not only tonight in Las Vegas, but this Saturday in Iowa City. The annual Cyclo-cross race, for the first time ever, is a World Cup event. And all of these riders making the trip. Won't be easy for some. The logistics of getting these riders and teams from Las Vegas to Iowa City, which is a couple of days in between, very challenging. They'll all be there in Iowa this weekend.
Rob Peters is a rider that's been a World Championship medalist, been a World Cup podium rider, but he's had a couple of years that have been in the wilderness a little bit, and it's good to see him back at the front of a World Cup. And it's, you know, sometimes it's just the motivation of having a rider like Van Aert as a teammate, and you know, whether he's doing a job now for Van Aert or whether he's riding for himself, it's still a motivation, and I think sometimes that's all you need.
3 laps left to go. Belgians in the first 8 spots coming across the line that time. Group of 14 here at the front. What does that do to the dynamic here with only 3 laps to go?
Just wondering if any of those 14 aren't Belgians, actually. Oh yeah, Philippe Walsleben, the German national champion.
Van Amerongen of the Netherlands up there. And back to Jeremy Powers in the Stars and Stripes of the U.S. coming across here.
Good ride by Michael Vandenham there from Canada. Riding in the top 15 right now.
No Rob Peters at the front. Others content to let him set the pace for now. Sweck in 2nd and Wout van Aert in 3rd.
Boulot, the Frenchman, is the number 14 in that line. Just keeps getting concertinaed out of the back every time they get to a set of stairs. And of course, it's very easy to say, once you get back, move up the group, but in practice, it's a lot harder as well.
Now, Wout van Aert coming back to the front. Sweck now in 2nd, Peters 3rd. More careful over those steps that caused him to trip a few laps ago. And Wout van Aert putting in an acceleration here. Haven't seen him use this kind of energy since he had to make up the ground he lost with the crash. But now trying to open the gap here.
It's the 2 riders that we'd expect to follow him. It's Sweek and Van Tornout. Are the 2 desperately trying to cling on to him right now.
Van Tornout in 2nd with that light blue helmet. Sweck in 3rd. And you've got Hermans, Ertz, Powell still there. But the world champion right now setting the tempo, and it's become a heavy one as we work down to the final few laps.
Dieter Van Tornout's moved up that group as well. He was, thought it was Kevin Powell's, but it's actually the other family member, Van Tornout. Just hanging on to the back of, or trying to hang on to the back of Rob Peters there. Kevin Powers has let that gap go. I don't think he's coming back.
Vanternout, the only one who can keep pace now with Wout van Aert, but he accelerates once again as he prepares to hit the sand dune. Walked last time. This time he's going to ride through it.
Big mistake from Vanternout.
Really got sideways, got off the bike, and he's going to lose several places as a result.
But how sportsmanlike was that, moving out of the rut to allow the other riders to ride if they were behind him instead of just running in the rut? Very conscious of the people around him.
See that again.
As soon as he went into it, yeah, just lost his center of balance.
In trouble right away. Sweck rode through. Maintained his position on the bike. So did Wout van Aert, who led everybody through, and now that has allowed Van Aert to open up a bigger margin here, because Vanternout was the rider behind him going into the sand. He had the trouble. It slowed everybody else down at least a little. And oh boy, look at how big the gap has become. Wow. Sweck here in second. And it's Hermans third, Vanternout fourth.
10 seconds back to Sweck there. I don't think they're going to see him again. Just over 2 laps to go.
Sweck looks like he's put in a huge effort, feeling the effects, and the group really strung out. Not too long ago, it was a group of about a dozen or so riding together, and now it's absolutely shattered.
14 riders were there, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Wout van Aert at the front. He was the one who first put on the pressure. That blew the group up. Then things changed in the sand, and now Van Aert by himself, the way he was last year, the way he's been in so many races. Out front, riding solo. When he comes across the finish next time, he'll see 2 laps left to go. Sweck back here at the front of this group of 3. Hermans behind him, the Vanternout, but they're looking around. Nobody really wants to work. Nobody wants to lead. But somebody's going to have to do the chasing.
Yeah, the energy's gone out of that chase, hasn't it? You can tell by the body language of Sweck. It's around 13 seconds.
Sweck doesn't really have it in him. Vanternout
was the one, I think. Yeah. He was the one that could have maybe hung on for a bit longer.
So the world champion Wout van Aert, 8 laps down, 2 to go. And we'll get the official gap back to the others, but it is growing. As they cross the line, certainly not keeping the same pace. Sweck frustrated. He wants the others to work. Nobody rolling through, shaking his head. They're all looking behind them.
18 seconds, 19 seconds. Yeah, that's not going to come back.
Now Sweck doesn't have it in the legs. Vanternout made the acceleration in his big move when Van Aert crashed several laps ago and tried to get away. He was eventually caught, then had the trouble in the sand, so he seems to be done. Nobody else has the ability to go forward, lead the chase, and bring back the man in the rainbow jersey. Second group on the road, a group of 6. But they are fading, not moving forward. Now it's a battle, it looks like, for the other 2 spots on the podium. Dieter Vanternout, number 13 there, coming to the front. Pace notably slower behind this man, Wout van Aert. What a recovery from the crash and the time lost to the way he quickly made up the deficit and now has ridden back to the front and out front solo to establish a commanding lead.
Jeremy Powers just passed our commentary point, 18th, 1:33.
Still looks pretty strong.
Ian Phil in a group of 5 riders there, currently 19th. 19th back to 23rd.
Just look at the body language in this second group on the road, this contingent of half a dozen. Nobody seems to have the ability to really do much at all anymore.
No, they're racing for the other podium spots, aren't they?
This man riding away with the win once again. If he comes around next time, we'll hear the bell for the final lap.
And honestly, once the gap's gone out over, 15 seconds, 20 seconds, there's little point in making the big effort to try to reduce that gap. They know the level of Van Aert. They know that they're going to have a real hard time bringing him back. They were having a hard time stopping him riding away. So then it's just a case of regrouping and trying to make, the best of the next podium step and trying to get the second spot.
Do you want to risk the podium but trying to go in for the win when you know the win is probably not likely going to happen?
Exactly. Unless he has another issue like he had earlier in the race when he stumbled on the stairs, then but the way he's riding the hardest sections of the course, like the sand just there, he's back where he left off last year.
How impressive is this, considering the crash, to be able to come back to do what he is doing right now?
Very, because if you imagine without the crash, he would have probably made this move, a couple of laps earlier, and he would have he'd have been cruising around with probably, 30-second gap and just making it look very, very easy. He's right now he's a level above the other riders in the front of this group.
And what does it do to the other riders, the psychological statement that it makes for the rest of the season, that he's able to crash, lose time, and come back and win comfortably?
Yeah. It's a hard one. You've got to try and figure out what you can do to raise your level to try and compete for the wins. And right now, there's probably only Van der Poel, Van der Haar maybe that have that ability to raise their level to challenge him. I don't think anybody else right now in this race, going into the next races, is capable of strongly challenging for the win. If Van Aert's there and in good shape, and he obviously is in good shape.
Certainly doesn't give hope to the others, and for Van Aert, it has to do just the opposite, embolden him, give him even more confidence.
Sure, yeah. But I'm sure Van der Poel was watching this at home thinking, right, I know now what I've got to do. I know that he's come into the season as strong as he was, as strong as he finished last year. And he knows what he's got to do, and the same with Van der Haar and the new riders like Sweeck and Van Toorn. I think they've made a step up to be where they are now. You can't discredit them at all for the level of ability that they've increased to ride onto a podium with Van Aert.
What is it that seems to make him not just better than the others, but better than the others by as much as he is?
He doesn't seem to have a weakness. With the others, you can say, they're better when it's wet, or they're better on a hilly course, or they're better on the ice, or they're not so good when it's a bit more running. But with this guy, it's very hard to find a chink in his armour. Really, and he's been dominant, and he's won on such a variety of courses and times of the year and weather conditions that he's starting out, I think, as one of these once-in-a-generation riders that in a few years' time will be saying we've never seen anybody like him.
1 lap left to go for the world champion Wout van Aert as he looks to defend his title here at CrossVegas. And this final lap basically going to be a coronation This is the battle for the rest of the podium with Van der Nout and Sweck, and then a gap to this group. Now they're opening up a margin here as they battle for second and third. Just over 1 hour in. And these riders lost their impetus pretty quickly. So Wout van Aert on his final lap by himself, the way he was a year ago, and on his way to winning the first World Cup events of the new season. Won't be his prettiest effort given the fall earlier, but maybe one of his most impressive, considering the fact that he lost almost half a minute, recovered that in no time, and now will win going away by a huge margin. At the end of this race, we're going to see the margin he wins by, and if you didn't see what happened earlier, you didn't know any better, you would have thought that he's been at the front since early in the race. But you would have had no idea that he crashed and had to use energy in the middle to recover and also build up a big lead to win at the end.
Yeah, he probably found himself just around about 20th place, I guess. We saw him getting back on when Powers went past. I think at the time Powers was in that 19th, 20th.
Now he says that in his mind, his weaknesses are that little lack of explosiveness coming out of the corners, and he's not the best at technical courses like we have here at CrossVegas, but I mean, that's just minimal stuff. We're talking very fine little details, sharpening form as opposed to improving on real deficiencies, because as you said, he doesn't have any.
Yeah, and his lack of explosiveness out of the corners, he covers it up so well with his just kind of constant ability to ride at a very high level. Yeah, you can criticize him for not having a surge or a jump, but
you don't need it. It doesn't matter.
When he can ride like that, he doesn't need it. And I think the other one, the lack of technical. There's so many different kinds of technical, and we heard Powers earlier talking about this course being technical. It's technical in a completely different way to technical in a wet Belgian race.
Sure.
In December. Something like Namur as an example. It was totally different. It's technical in its own kind of specificity, but yeah, it's.
He was just saying that it didn't suit him, but
sure,
it still suits him well enough to be able to put away the field.
The technical challenges on this course are no problem to him at all. Apart from a step that he trips over.
If they could eliminate that, he'd have it all dialed in. So Van der Nout now pulling away from Sweck to try and solidify second place. Remember, he had trouble with the sand earlier and has to get off his bike once again. Sweck has made it through without getting off. And some others now closing in. That is Van Aert's. And also Quinten Hermans, the teammates, making a late challenge for the podium.
One of two things. He's either going to lock him up at third.
Wout van Aert's turned 22 years of age just last week on Thursday. Won all 3 of the major series last year. Won the world title. Won 19 races altogether a year ago. And has already won 2 races this year. One in Belgium to start the season. And one in Wisconsin. In the very same way that he's winning tonight, going out to the lead, riding solo, establishing a big margin and just holding on. So this will be 2 weeks in a row winning on American soil, with one more World Cup race in North America next week, or I should say this weekend in Iowa City.
Now he knows he's put together the right program. Down and out, halfway through this race.
Van Aert's not quite shaking off Sweek here. going to be a little bit of a drag race for the last half lap for these two. I think
Now Vantern out, second, Swick third. And then it's Ertz, a distant fourth.
Peters hanging in for fifth. And Quinton Herman's currently in sixth.
Wout van Aert won bronze in Louisville 3 years ago at the Under-23 World Championships. Won gold at that same level a year later in Hoogerheide. Silver in Tabor in 2015 in his first go-round in the elite men's race before winning gold for the first time in Zolder last year. But this could be just the beginning of many rainbow jerseys in a row for the 22-year-old from Belgium, Wout van Aert. Vantern out, trying to hang on to second place. Swick trying to challenge. And this man coming to the end. Wout van Aert, after crashing earlier in the race, making up almost half a minute. He's going to win going away for the second year in a row. Wout van Aert defends his title in Las Vegas. He wins CrossVegas for the second year in a row. Now pointing to his hip. That's what he injured during the crash. As the rest of the podium is decided here, Michael Vantern now takes second, and Laurens Swick will finish third. Those are your top three. And it's Ertz in fourth, and Rob Peters rounding out the top five in Las Vegas.
We're going to see Jeremy Powers, first American, in around about 15th or 16th place.
Belgians occupy the top 7 places altogether.
Oosleben there, nice ride for him. He was hoping for a top 15. He's top, where is he, 8th there. Tim Merlier 9th. Van Amerongen in 10th, so like we said, Telenet Fidea, strength in depth, 4 or 5 guys there in the top 10. Just nobody on the podium.
Now he had the opportunity to celebrate, high-fiving the fans. And what a win it was. Don't know if he's ever won quite like this in terms of having to recover from a crash like that banged up his left hip, it appeared. But still, when you can ride in solo with that kind of margin to deal with, it just shows there is nobody at his level right now. Wout van Aert, the world champion in a league of his own, winning the first World Cup race of the season. Now the young Belgian, part of a very strong Belgian contingent in Las Vegas. And he is going to be tough to beat in every race that he enters. Looking ahead to Iowa City in just a few days on Saturday, how are they going to beat him there? Going to be largely the same field. What can they do?
Jeremy Powers, I think 18th. Just crossed the line.
Just about 2.5 minutes behind our winner. So, what a night in Las Vegas, the women and the men, and the dual podium for both the ladies and the men coming up. Here are the unofficial results for the men. Wout van Aert, after the crash that cost him more than 22 seconds, wins by 22 over Michael Vantern and Laurens Swick, who round out the podium. Ertz and Peters complete the top 5. As you see, the Belgians occupying the first 7 places in the overall standings and 8 of the first 9. With the top 10 separated by just over 1 minute. As Wout van Aert completes the 10 laps in just under 1 hour and 7 minutes. Coming to U.S. several days ago, going straight to Wisconsin. He raced that Trek event in Madison, won that in decisive, convincing fashion, just like this, coming in solo. Did some sponsor activities in Chicago, came to Las Vegas, and even though he had to deal with the travel, the movement, and some of the extracurricular activities, still showing his strength, his form, and his impressive qualities to pull off this win to open up the World Cup campaign. With the Las Vegas Strip about 20 minutes away to the east. Interbike going on all this week. And Interbike just kicking off. Part of the reason they established this CrossVegas race to coincide with Interbike and make it one big party in Las Vegas, of course. And a terrific venue, the Desert Breeze Soccer Complex, turned into a bike racing course for one night a year, but one of the best stops on the World Cup circuit. That's just the first of 9 races that will be held this year, culminating with the World Championships in Luxembourg at the end of January. So Simon, overall, obviously Wout van Aert with a hugely impressive ride. What in particular stood out the most to you?
The recovery from the little tumble on the stairs, definitely. But I think just his overall dominance. I think he just showed how strong he is. I think we're going to see the race highlights now.
And the crash that happened early on. Watch, it comes up quickly here.
You can see Powers. Actually, Powers lost a lot of time off the start. Obviously didn't get his foot in. Powers made that corner, but I think it was him that banked shoulders with somebody that then dominoed onto the left-hand side. I think it was... Yeah, it was Powers that just maybe touched the wheel. But from the start we had, yeah, a big group. Quinten Hermans led it out with Telenet Fidea.
And that was the crash of Wout van Aert.
Yep.
So he starts holding his left hip and is not quick to get back on the bike. His bike is tangled up in the ribbon there and eventually does make it back on. He was suffering. He was holding his hip after the crash. Van Aert now tried to take advantage. He was the one man who really accelerated and sped up after the crash, knowing it was his moment. But eventually Van Aert recovering and did not take a long time to get back to the front, riding through the sand. And he reeled him in. But Sweck and Van Aert held him off for a while. There was a slight gap before Wout van Aert came back to the front, and then it's this next time through the sand that's the decisive moment in the entire race, because after he had accelerated, and you're going to see Van Aert now lose his grip in the sand, and that's when the big gap opened. And then at the end, all alone. And it was a typical finish for him, as Van Aert and Sweck raced in behind to complete the podium, but the high fives for the big crowd in Las Vegas. '22-year-old world champion. Not only the best in the world, but best by a mile, it seems. Wout van Aert, the winner for the second year in a row in Las Vegas.
Wout van Aert, terrific win. You crash, you come back. Was that Vegas adrenaline?
I think so. Actually, the crash was pretty painful, and afterwards I got a kind of boost and of the adrenaline. So I made it very quick and back in front, but afterwards I felt my efforts, and yeah, it was at that point I was not sure at all I could do the final move. But yeah, in the beginning, sometimes it's a disadvantage that you are the main favorite because everyone is looking at you, but once you have a gap, it seems like nobody was reacting, and they were happy with the second place, I guess. So that made it more easy for me in the final.
That final move came in the sand. Was that deliberate? Did you think about that before the race?
Yeah, of course. In the pre-ride, I already felt that it was a critical point. The sand pit was very tough to make it in somebody's wheel. So it was definitely something that was on my mind before the race.
Op training reed er eigenlijk niemand door de zandstrook. En in de wedstrijd waren er verschillende. Eigenlijk jij vooral met Michael van Toeren ook.
Ja, klopt. Ik denk in de verkenning bolt het hier zodanig zwaar dat niemand eigenlijk echt de moeite doet om die in de wedstrijd snelheid op te pikken om richting de zandbak te rijden. En in de cross komt dan automatisch toch veel sneller aan en dan bleek toch dat die beginsnelheid veel impact had op het resultaat in de zandbak. En als je genoeg snelheid had, was het wel doenbaar.
Je valt en dan lig je 30 seconden achter. Wist je dat de achterstand zo groot was en waar heb je last van eigenlijk?
Ja, voor te beginnen was het al een heel domme valpartij. Ik was even minder geconcentreerd denk ik en ik bleef met mijn teen achter de trap haken. En om me nog te corrigeren stamp ik vol tegen de volgende tree en zo heb ik me eigenlijk heel hard bezeerd aan mijn teen. En ook aan mijn rug, omdat ik vol op mijn borstkas viel, kreeg ik een klap in mijn rug. En toen kwam ik eigenlijk heel snel korter, dus dat was misschien wel al een goed teken dat ik de betere was in de koers. Maar toen ik vooraan was, had ik toch even nodig om te recupereren.
Je rijdt een halve minuut dicht in geen tijd en dan rijd je een halve minuut weg in geen tijd.
Ja, achteraf bekeken klinkt dat wel mooi, maar ik heb er wel hard voor moeten rijden. En ik denk dat achter mij ook de jongens vrij snel zich neerleggen bij de tweede plaats. En, het is vaak een nadeel om als groot favoriet te rijden, omdat iedereen op je wiel wil koersen. Maar eens dat je een gat hebt, doen ze blijkbaar geen moeite meer achter mij, dus dat is ook wel mooi.
Let's conclude in English. You've won in Waterloo, Wisconsin. You've done it again here at the World Cup in Las Vegas. There's Saturday's World Cup in Iowa. How about 3 victories in a row on American soil?
Oh, that would be great. I enjoy my time here and I'm very grateful for the American people who came out on the races. They are very enthusiastic and it's really a gain for our sport, I feel. So I hope to see everyone again in Iowa and I'm going to try to make it 3 out of 3 for sure.
Thanks, dankjewel.
Merci.
Well, hard to see any way that he's not going to make it 3 for 3 after crashing there and still winning by over 20 seconds.
Yeah, right now he's the man of the moment for sure. Nothing's going to change in the next 2 days, whether he trains hard or just sits around on planes. No, he's come into the season in great shape and great morale, and he's doing the World Championship jersey proud. And I think for him to start the season with that jersey, with a win in the World Cup, it's his dream scenario.
It's got to be frustrating for the others too, because this isn't a sport where you can play defense. If you're not strong enough, you just can't compete against somebody who's this good, this consistent.
Sure, but it's very unusual to find someone that's this strong and this consistent for a very long period of time. And you know, other riders kind of peak and trough a little bit during the season. And you know, certain riders come into better shape at certain times and on different courses and in different weather. And I think what we're saying, we said it before, in Van Aert we've got a rider that's a man for all seasons, and right now he looks like he's strong from September until February. And there is very little you can do about that, because it is probably a once in a generation rider that can do that.
If he chose to go to the road, let's say at some point, and do it full time, how do you think he'd do?
I'm sure he'd be competitive, and we've seen it with someone like with Stybar. Very similarly, you know, Stybar could win World Cups and was elite world champion at Cyclo-cross, and he's a major player in the classics and on certain stages of stage races. No reason to expect that Van Aert would be any different to that. He's a class athlete, and but it's just, you know, where they see the careers going. And I think if he's only 22, Van Aert, and if he wins the World Cup and he wins the World Championships for 2 or 3 years, suddenly you lose motivation to, you know, there aren't any more challenges for you in cyclocross, and you go and find your challenges somewhere else. And you know, you might do that on the road for a few years, and I'm sure he can make very good money on the road, and you can go make some money and see how far you can get, and then you could, honestly, you could still come back, like we hope Stibar will, or Lars Boom or somebody will come back to cyclo-cross in their, early mid-30s, because it's still possible, and they've got the experience and they've got the, the years of racing at a high level. But there's all sorts of different motivations. There's winning titles and there's making money, and a lot of riders have gone from cyclo-cross to the road to be not necessarily successful, but a good team rider that can earn significant salary compared to what they could make as a cyclo-cross rider.
Now, he says he still enjoys cyclocross, but if you're winning a lot of races the way he seems to be able to, by wide margins over the rest of the field, at some point maybe you start to think that he does look for a new challenge. He does look for something else to fuel the competitive drive.
Animals like him are, they're a certain breed, aren't they? They need to win. They need challenges and need to be pushed. And once it becomes a little bit too easy, you don't just keep doing it just to keep winning world titles. You want something else, another challenge in your sporting life. So.
And this now, the women's podium with Katie Compton of the U.S. on the bottom step, finishing in third.
Ladies and gentlemen, Katie Compton of the United States of America.
Two-time overall World Cup winner and U.S. national champion.
In second place from the Czech Republic, Katarina Nash.
Nash, the winningest all-time racer at CrossVegas, but not this year. However, she's been on the podium every year she's competed in the event.
Ladies and gentlemen, Katarina Nash of the Czech Republic. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the winner of Cliff Bar CrossVegas in the elite women's category from the Netherlands, Sophie de Boer.
Sophie de Boer, the surprise of the three. Struggling on the final lap, but finding somehow the wherewithal and the extra gear to sprint for the win at the end.
Ladies and gentlemen, Sophie de Boer of the Netherlands.
So it's Sophie de Boer, Katarina Nash, and Katie Compton, the top three in the women's World Cup opener in Las Vegas.
We will play the national anthem of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for our champions. And now we will call upon Sven Ness, a member of the UCI Cyclo-cross Commission, to present the leader's jersey of the Telenet UCI Cyclo-cross World Cup. With him will be Brooke Watts, director of Cliff Bar CrossVegas.
So now the overall World Cup leader's jersey, as the results obviously for the first race will dictate how the World Cup standings fall from here. The overall World Cup positions mirroring that of the results of this first World Cup race of the season.
The leader of the Telenet UCI Cyclo-cross World Cup,
Sven
elite
Nys,
women from the Netherlands,
the two-time world champion out there on the podium, helping to present the jersey to de Boer. Multiple-time CrossVegas winner as well.
One more time, please, Vegas, for your champions.
Sophie de Boer going to be a factor all season long, you got to think, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, for sure. I think we'll see Sanne Cant come back, and we'll see Talita de Jong hopefully show up pretty soon. We might get Marianne Vos back. It's going to be an interesting season for sure for women's racing.
And some other women's awards to be handed out as well. They have an under 23 category, fastest lap as well.
Sven Ness, representative of the UCI, and he will present our top women's U23.
And the top U23 rider award to be presented momentarily.
The leader of the Telenet UCI Cyclo-cross World Cup Women's U23 category from the United States of America, Ellen Noble.
So Ellen Noble of the U.S., one of 18 Americans in the women's race tonight, wins the under 23 award as the top U23 rider in the event. Good ride by her as she hung with her group most of the way. Was it at the front, but very competitive as one of just a handful of under 23 riders in the overall race itself. Noble finishing 8th altogether, 4th best American.
And ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to award the fastest lap of the race today in Cliff Bar, CrossVegas, from the Netherlands, Sophie de Boer.
Sophie de Boer going back up to receive her fastest lap award. A time of 7 minutes and 42 seconds. Best lap.
One more time, please.
And de Boer takes it, so she gets the win. The World Cup leaders jersey and fastest lap tonight in Las Vegas. Now, Wout van Aert, who just turned 22 years of age last week on Thursday. Defending world champion, defending CrossVegas winner. And after crashing early in the race tonight to kick off the World Cup season, hurting his left hip, comes back and wins convincingly by 22 seconds to once again cement his position as the top rider in the sport. Now the men's podium from here in Las Vegas.
Ladies and gentlemen, Lawrence Swade from Belgium. Ladies and gentlemen, in second place, also from Belgium, Michael Van Turnhout.
So Swake and Van Turnhout, 3rd and 2nd respectively. And the world champion coming up to occupy the top step.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, your winner today at Cliff Bar, CrossVegas, for the elite men from Belgium, Wout van Aert.
Third win of the season. After victories in Belgium and in Wisconsin, but here in his first World Cup race of the year, he takes it going away. And can make it back-to-back World Cup wins on Saturday in Iowa City as the Belgian national anthem gets set to play.
Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for our champions.
Wout van Aert Michael Van Ternhout and Lauren Sweat, top 3 in Las Vegas. Wout van Aert, the overall World Cup winner, world champion, and 2-time CrossVegas winner.
From Belgium.
And now taking the overall World Cup leaders jersey. He pulls that on and may never take it off this year, huh?
Wout van Aert from Belgium.
Going to be a favorite in every race this season. And the final 2 awards of the evening: best under 23 rider and fastest lap. What do you think the best under 23 rider is?
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to also award the
It's an open elite race, so they only have the under 23 races separate for the European legs. So the under 23s.
From Belgium, please put your hands together for Wout van Aert. Fastest lap on the day.
He comes back out for the fastest lap, which goes down at 6 minutes and 19 seconds.
And ladies and gentlemen, Wout van Aert from Belgium. And stay around just for a moment. Our 2 leaders come up with our champion CrossVegas jersey on.
So they'll bring the 2 winners back to the podium here momentarily for the final presentation of the night. And what a night it was. Terrific weather in the Nevada deserts, under the lights, perfect temperature, and some quality racing and some exciting racing. The women coming down to the final lap, 3 riders competing for the win, surprise winner. And then in the men's race, Wout van Aert was the clear favorite, but after crashing, he had to recover a lot of lost time and still won decisively on the night. So that will close things out for us on this Wednesday night from Nevada. For Simon Burney, I'm Steve Schlanger. The 2 big winners for the ladies, Sophie de Boer, and for the men, Wout van Aert, as we open up the Cyclo-cross World Cup season and now say goodnight from Las Vegas.